Hello, everybody. Great day. Welcome to another podcast from the Victory Haven Wellness Group. We appreciate you watching this and reviewing this and joining us for this time. What we're going to be discussing tonight is the past 23 years that we
our mindset, where we were 23 years ago when we started on this health journey of cancer and degenerative back discs, and where we are now. Just give you an idea.
Sure. Thank you so much for explaining that, Naomi.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're going to be discussing what happened 23 years ago and how we progressed into the arena of becoming coaches, life health coaches. One thing that before we start the discussion tonight, I'd want to ask Naomi if there's any housekeeping things that she wanted to speak to.
Just we invite you to check out our website, victoryhaven.org, and we used to host a weekly wellness group in our home. Now it's going to be right here online, and you can find more information about that. Become a member of the weekly wellness group. You can find more information at our website. Again, it's victoryhaven.org.
Very good. Thank you very much. I wanted to open up, first of all, now getting into the discussion with what happened 23 years ago. 23 years ago, I was working here at away from home, actually. No, 23 years ago, I was working as a locally, and Naomi came down with the first diagnosis of cancer.
And I wanted to say, too, that a reason why we're doing this podcast tonight, just to give you an idea of what was going on in our heads at that time when I was first diagnosed, because I had 2 diagnoses. And so just give you an idea, because we talk to people on a regular basis. Some of them have just been diagnosed. And we are so far, we started out here and now we're here. And I think some people don't realize that we actually did go through some of that mindset that they're going through. They think that maybe we were already over here. So this is why we wanted to share with you from our hearts where we were, and that we understand your fears, we understand the confusion, we understand the crazy maze of information that's out there, and some of it agrees with each other, and some of it they're fighting World War III or whatever. And so we just wanted to share some of that with you. Now, what was your question again?
My point was I was going to share with is that when we found out the diagnosis of cancer, I lived in life, I lived in wanting to be normal. And I lived in a maze of I was actually just troubled and not really knowing what to do in regards to what we needed to do personally as a family. I left the decision mostly up to the Naomi and wanted to go ahead and start just living life as best as I could, because that's what I understood life to be. We were raised in, you do what you can and you do it the best you can. However, that wasn't enough.
So cancer was my deepest fear. Everybody I had known, they got diagnosed and they died. Get diagnosed and you die. And so I was terrified. And we have a daughter, and I wanted to see her get married, and I wanted to see our grandkids. And I wasn't ready to die. I was actually terrified of dying at that time. Outside the issue of wanting to see our daughter get married and our grandkids, to meet our grandkids. And I also had the mindset that the doctors knew best, and that if I didn't do what they said to do, then and I don't know how I came up with this, but this was my mindset, was that somehow I could be arrested and put in jail. Not something I wanted to do either.
So it was a lot of questions that we had in our brains. We learned from the get-go that if we pray, memorize verses, go to church, and do a good at our jobs, everything's going to come out. Well, most like many of you, you may have been doing the same things, and it has turned out not that way. God brings things in our life to tap us on the shoulder, and that's what God did. He said, "You think you're doing okay, but there's more adventurous things to get involved with." And so we've shared with other people in the past, and I share this with people. Our cancer diagnosis was a blessing.
Yes, it was.
And it still
Cancer is my friend.
Yes.
It's taught me so much about the body and how the body has the ability to heal if we give it the right tools.
Exactly. So I was sleeping, doing the thing any good man decides to do, which God said, "Tim, that's not good enough." And what I'm not talking about works here. He says, "I want you to wake up." And so it was a hard thing for me to wake up from my slumber in regards to doing what needed to be done. The first stage that I woke up, it said, "Okay, we got cancer." Now I had to determine how we were going to move forward on that.
And you notice he keeps saying, "We got cancer, we got cancer." He's claiming the cancer. That's where we were. We were claiming it. I've since learned, you say, "I had a diagnosis," and you don't take ownership of the diagnosis. You don't take ownership of the dis-ease. But that's where we were saying, "I got cancer," as if, "Oh, I got a book," type of thing. And yeah, that's where we were.
So Naomi and I was going to just ride along the waves. That's the support I gave her. I was going to give her the support she needed to ride the waves. Fortunately, she didn't ride the waves. She actually walked into the waves and said, "There's got to be something more." She was the adventurous one, because I came home and she says, "Take this book, or read this, or think about this.
Listen to this."
Yes. And so I started saying, "Oh, really?" Well, fortunately, I don't know how soon you want to go in this, but I had a friend who gave me a tape that talked about cancer and how the diagnosis is not something to be afraid of, but it actually is a wake-up call, and that the diagnosis of cancer most appropriately comes after you've had cancer for 8 to 10 years.
Yep. And where I was on that was, all my life I had met people who had tried conventional therapies for whatever it was. It wasn't always cancer, and most of them weren't cancer, because, like I say, most of the people that I met, they got diagnosed and they died. They got diagnosed with cancer and they died. So these other people that I had met throughout my life had other issues, other health challenges, and had tried conventional but weren't getting help. So they had gone the natural way and were getting help. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I got to do what the doctors say, but there's got to be another way. There's just got to be. And my intuition, my gut talks to me quite a bit. And I find that when I listen to it, then I do the right thing and I do what's best for me. When I blow it off and I don't listen, that's when I get myself in trouble. So, but I still went ahead with surgery, and I interviewed the oncologist and the radiologist just in case, because I hadn't done research. and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just knew that there had to be something different.
Well, during that time, I was going to Naomi's appointments and supporting her. That's what I had decided to do, was just be with her into the appointments and listen to her and to ask the questions. So we began to slowly crack open the door at one of our appointments with the oncologist. She handed me the book. What was the name of that book? Hope When It Hurts?
Hope When It Hurts, yes.
Correct. By Lyra Burkett, who dealt with his cancer. And so it was the chapter on what chemotherapy does. It's like putting the atom bomb into your body.
And so we're not going to get real deep into what we did. We're just sharing with you our mindset. But we did learn from his book a lot. And we would question the oncologist during our interview with her. And she pretty much confirmed everything that he was saying, which was confirming with me what my intuition, my gut, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, was talking to me about, that there has to be something different, something better than chemo and radiation.
Yes. And then, well, I think there was a key point, key change in Naomi's stand when a nurse approached her.
Oh yes, I was in for the radiologist interview, and the nurse wanted to take my vitals, and I shared with her my concerns, and I'll tell you what, she was an angel sent to me for this very reason. She told me no one can make you do what you don't want to do. I tell you, I felt like a caged up bird, that somebody had opened the door and I was allowed to fly like I was meant to do, like I was born to do, just fly, fly. That was so freeing, and that was definitely a turning point.
So when Naomi approached me and told me about that, I said, well, the doctors say that cancer is a terrible diagnosis, and we need to get it started next week. The sooner we get it, the better. However, the fact that the diagnosis takes from the point you get cancer and to when the doctor is capable, just beginning to diagnose this cancer, it's 8 to 12 years.
Now, people say, well, what about babies?
Okay.
They've not been alive for 8 to 12
Good
years.
Good point, Naomi. Go ahead.
Yeah. And what we've learned is that it can come through the mother for whatever reason, chemicals that she's been exposed to. I know somebody who, her dad is a Vietnam vet, and he was exposed to Agent Orange. And she believes that it came from him through her, because she wasn't yet born when he was in Vietnam. And so she believes it came through him into her and affected their baby. But we're not going to go into the different therapies and stuff like that. We're talking about our mindset.
Correct. Okay. So then what happened was I when she made the turning point, I decided to do what I need to do, and I mentioned we need to go just as aggressive in the attacking the big diagnosis of cancer.
The treatment that we were going to follow, the path, the route that we were going to do.
So we started going into the myriads of resources that we share in our weekly wellness group to go ahead and discuss where paths can be taken.
And let me tell you this, that 23 years ago, we didn't have the internet like we have today. We couldn't do all the research that's available at our fingertips today. And there were no health coaches that we could turn to, and there were no support groups to go to either. So this is why we do what we do, because we've been through it. We had to navigate the maze on our own. and figure out what was best and which direction to go. So we've been through the maze, and we're here to help people um, recently diagnosed get through the maze themselves. We also do weekly wellness group for follow up because being on our own without the support, we know that like holidays are especially terrible and trying and hard because you may be the only one at your holiday party that has a specific diet to eat. Maybe you can't eat cheese anymore, maybe you can't eat bread anymore, and everybody else is eating things full of cheese and full of bread, and maybe you've cut out sugar, and of course there's the cakes and the cookies and the pies that are full of sugar. And so, where's your support? Just like where we were, we would have loved to have had a support group. So that's why we're doing this as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, it took me several years to go ahead and get on board because I had to come down with a critical illness. And it was degenerative back disease. And so we were told by the doctors, that's just part of life. But I had already been working with Naomi, and we were seeing such great turnarounds that I decided, well, I'm going to go do the same thing for myself. And
so as you see, I was on my own for 13 years.
Financially,
he was supportive.
I was supporting and financially working through the different things. But then several years later, I came on board and said, yes, I've got to take care of myself too.
Right. Well, and I wanted to mention too, we were navigating the maze, and I've got to get my notes here. We were navigating the maze and finding some information. We had to get books or tapes to listen to, and we were looking at it, and the recipes that were suggested, and we had heard about a pastor who was diagnosed with cancer, and he had watched his mother go through cancer and all the treatments, and how horrific it was. She'd done the conventional chemo and radiation, and how horrific it was. And he decided that if he ever got diagnosed, he was not going to do that, and he was going to follow Yahweh's way. So we got information from him and from a couple of other resources, and some of that was recipe books. And looking at them, I'm like, ugh, what is this? It was so foreign, and we didn't even know what some of the ingredients were, or let alone where we could get them. And I grew up military, and Timothy is retired military. I have internationals in my family. I lived in Japan for 3 years. I absolutely love eating international food. But these recipes that we were learning about, they were from Mars. That's what I was thinking, was that they were from Mars. And I've talked to other people that when I introduced them to some of the recipes that we use now, because we've come full circle, they say the same thing. What in the world is this ingredient? This is crazy. This is weird. Ugh. I remember too getting so excited about making some new recipes that I took them to a potluck I was going to. Thankfully, some people did take some and try it, but most of it ended up in the trash because it was so foreign to their taste buds as well. Another thing that was that my mindset really had to have work on was one resource made the comment, "You are gonna die if you don't follow it this way." And we're like, whoa, one way or no way. Wow. I have to let you know that we have come full circle, and we are now following that. So there's a mindset reset.
So I must point out here, when we first got the first resources, we came across that if you don't do it this way,
Yeah.
you will die. And so we said we rejected it. There's so many other ways to go it. And so we did a third-party study. We did continue more studies, and we were doing more and more and more studies. And the more we examined and tried the different resources, we found out it came right back to the original speaker,
Right.
original resource. And we
Right.
said, wow, it took us how many years to come back to that?
Oh, goodness, at least 15.
I think it was around 10 years, as I recall. It was
10 or 15, yeah.
Right. 10 or 15 years that actually we came back and we watched that video again and we said, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
She was right all along.
Well, and my mindset when I heard that person say that was that I've known other people that had cancer and didn't eat this way, and they're still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons that I rejected it, was because good grief. Another thing too was that we had somebody tell us that I had so much fillings in my mouth that I needed to take all my teeth out. And we really balked at that and scoffed and ridiculed him and just all kinds of things. And we have learned that when you don't understand something, when you're afraid of something, when you haven't researched something, that's when you scoff at it, that's when you ridicule it, that's when you poo-poo it. And it took us a good, 6 weeks of researching and things. And then we came full circle on that as well. Another thing that really, really turned me off was I had an issue going on in my lower back, and this was during my second diagnosis. And I was working, the second diagnosis was, we have a saying, the longest road a man can take is
from their head to their heart.
And the first diagnosis, everything was in here. I was trying to follow a list of rules. You can eat this, you can't eat that. You can do this, you can't do that. Well, the second diagnosis was my wake-up call from Yahweh saying, hey, I called you to do a certain route. You need to be doing that route, please, and come back to it. And I tell you that what happened between the failure point between the two diagnoses, the reason I got the second one was because I was involved in business networking groups because I had a business of my own, and there's always food when you're at those groups. And it was rarely anything that I could eat. I paid $15 one time for a plate of lettuce with a little tiny piece of, what was it, tangerine or something like that on top that had come out of a can. And I'm like, good grief, where did this chef get his training? So I started comparing myself, and Yahweh tells us not to compare ourselves, that we need to pay attention to our own journey and do what He has called us to do, and not compare ourselves to other people and what they're doing or not doing. But I started saying, hey, that person had cancer. How come they can eat that and I can't? So I started going back to the old ways, and that's why I believe I was given the second diagnosis, which was my wake-up call from Yahweh. And during that second diagnosis, I was doing a natural therapy, and ended up with an issue in my lower back, and that was extremely painful. And I went for several months to doctors, getting all kinds of tests and everything to figure out what was going on. Just to sit here, I would have had to have had about 5 pillows to prop me up on the back and in the front because it was so painful. Well, I'd gone to a chiropractor, and my chiropractor at the time had suggested a therapy. It's called an enema. And I thought, oh, disgusting. And when I've talked to other people about enemas, their response
Was
is
the
the
same as
same.
ours, yes.
Yeah, the same as ours. That's disgusting.
But don't worry, we're not going to go ahead and force it on you or anything else. It's
No.
something, it's a learned response.
No, but you know what? We came full circle several months later, and it's what basically saved my life. So those are some of the things, some of the mindsets that we have had.
So we encourage you to test and search out for what needs to be done, because we did it. And we found out what I think the overriding factor on many of the things that we discovered was how many third-party resources confirm the others.
Exactly.
And then that they're not related, and yet they were saying exactly the same thing. We said, okay, that is a answer for what we need to do.
Yeah, and a lot of them had never even met each other, never even had a clue that each other existed.
Exactly. So that's the adventure we took. We did a lot of testing. We did a lot of finding out, and we got a lot of resources that were given to us. And I read it, took the time to read it, and it was confirming other things. And I said, let's try this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so one main thing that we learned from this particular adventure was that, and we'll get in detail on our weekly wellness group, is this, that the doctors in the West have a different mindset than doctors in the East.
Yes,
And that's increasing. So that is very interesting. So that is something that is not, they're not blending together, they're actually getting worse. And the doctors from the East have an interesting viewpoint that the doctors of the West don't even want to adventure into.
Right, right. And if you need some assistance, if you need guidance, I am a certified health coach and internationally certified nutritionist, and would love to be able to help you. Again, you can find out about our consultations, and having a consultation is part of a membership, and with that membership, it's like a concierge thing. You also get to be part of our weekly wellness group, and so I invite you to check it out on our website, again, victoryhaven.org.
That's all I've got, honey.
That's all I've got. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, and we're doing this. We're doing a wellness group every week. We hope to see you there.
Yes. Until next time.
And
ciao.
Until next time, like a friend of mine says, it's all about the blood.
There we go.